His name conjures images of burning cities and rivers of blood, of mounted warriors sweeping across continents like an unstoppable tide. Yet the man born as Temujin in the harsh Mongolian steppe around 1162 would become far more than history's most successful conqueror. He would, through methods both brilliant and brutal, inadvertently create the foundations of our interconnected modern world. This is the story of how an orphaned outcast transformed himself into the architect of globalization itself, and the uncomfortable truth about what that transformation required. The forge of adversity. Imagine a childhood so brutal it reads like deliberate fiction. Temujin was barely 9 years old when his father, Yesugei, was poisoned by rival Tatars. In the merciless hierarchy of 12th century steppe politics, a clan without a strong leader was carrion. His father's followers abandoned the family immediately, leaving Temujin, his mother Hoelun, and his siblings to face the Mongolian winter alone. This wasn't mere hardship. It was a death sentence narrowly avoided. The family survived on wild berries, marmots, and fish, constantly moving to evade hostile tribes. When Temujin was a teenager, he killed his half-brother Bekta in a dispute over food, an act that reveals both the desperation of their circumstances and the iron will that would later reshape continents. His mother was reportedly furious, not at the murder itself, but at the fractured family unity it represented. Then came enslavement. The Taichud clan, who had once followed his father, captured Temujin and placed him in a wooden kange, a mobile prison worn around the neck. He escaped during a feast when his captors were drunk, hiding in a river until he could make his way to safety. Each of these experiences, abandonment, starvation, fratricide, enslavement, escape forged something unprecedented. A leader who understood that survival depended on transcending tribal loyalty itself. The steppe in Temujin's youth was a landscape of constant low-intensity warfare. Tribes raided each other for horses, women, and pasture land in an endless cycle of revenge and counter-revenge. Resources were scarce, winters were deadly, and traditional tribal structures offered no path to security. The system was broken, and everyone knew it. What no one anticipated was that this orphaned outcast would be the one to shatter it completely. The revolution no one saw coming. Temujin's rise began with a radical idea that violated every principle of steppe society. Merit should matter more than birth. In a culture where bloodline determined everything, this was revolutionary, bordering on heretical. He promoted men based on ability and loyalty rather than aristocratic pedigree, elevating former enemies and commoners to positions of power previously reserved for nobility. His military reforms were devastatingly effective. The decimal system organizing troops into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000 created unprecedented coordination and flexibility. Unlike tribal warbands that fought as chaotic masses, Mongol armies moved with almost mechanical precision. Officers were promoted through battlefield performance, not family connections. Cowardice was punishable by death, not just for the individual, but for his entire unit, creating intense peer pressure for bravery. But Temujin understood that military might alone was insufficient. In 1206, when he was proclaimed Genghis Khan universal ruler at a great assembly, he introduced the Yasa, a comprehensive legal code that transformed Mongolian society. The Yasa was harsh but remarkably egalitarian. It guaranteed property rights, established religious tolerance, prohibited kidnapping women, created a postal relay system, and most significantly, made law apply equally to aristocrats and commoners alike. Consider what this meant. A society where nobles could be executed for crimes against peasants, where merchants could travel safely across tribal territories, where ability mattered more than birth. For the average Mongol, constantly at the mercy of tribal warfare and aristocratic caprice, Genghis Khan offered something intoxicating: security, meritocracy, and belonging to something greater than a perpetually feuding clan. The emotional appeal was profound. Genghis Khan spoke of the Mongol people as a unified nation rather than fractious tribes. He promised not just survival, but prosperity. Not just peace, but purpose. Warriors who joined him found themselves part of a disciplined, professional army where success brought tangible rewards. His vision resonated because it addressed the deepest failures of steppe society itself. The whirlwind what followed was military expansion on a scale unprecedented in human history. Between 1206 and Genghis Khan's death in 1227, Mongol armies conquered territory from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. The speed was staggering. Intelligence gathering was systematic and sophisticated, with merchants, travelers, and diplomats feeding information back to military commanders. But here's what's rarely discussed: the transition from nomadic raiding to systematic imperial administration. Genghis Khan wasn't interested in merely plundering, he wanted to rule. He appointed governors, collected taxes, established legal frameworks, and actively promoted trade. The Mongols were adapting from steppe raiders to something far more sophisticated. Imperial architects. The unintended globalization. The most profound aspect of Genghis Khan's legacy wasn't the destruction, but what emerged from the rubble. The Pax Mongolica. The Mongol peace created conditions for cultural exchange on a scale never before witnessed. With a single political authority controlling the Silk Road from end to end, trade exploded. Merchants could travel from Venice to Beijing under Mongol protection, something unthinkable in the fragmented medieval world. The passports issued by Mongol authorities were honored across the entire empire. Caravans, serays, way stations for travelers dotted the routes, providing security and accommodation. Technologies flowed in every direction. Gunpowder moved from China to Europe. Paper money, printing technology, the compass. Astronomical instruments all traveled along routes secured by Mongol power. Persian administrators brought sophisticated bureaucratic systems to China. Chinese engineers found employment in Persia. Ideas about mathematics, medicine, cartography, and astronomy crossed linguistic and cultural boundaries with unprecedented fluidity. Religious tolerance, codified in the Yasa, meant that Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, and shamanist communities coexisted within the empire. Mongol rulers patronized churches, mosques, and temples impartially. This wasn't liberal tolerance in the modern sense. It was pragmatic statecraft, but the effect was revolutionary. Missionaries, mystics, and theologians traveled freely, creating dialogues between faiths that reshaped religious thinking. The empire facilitated the exchange of crops and agricultural techniques. Persian rice varieties reached China. Chinese metallurgical advances spread westward. Even cuisines hybridized. The influence of Mongol cuisine can still be traced in dishes across Eurasia. But there was a darker side to this exchange: disease. The Black Death, which killed perhaps a third of Europe's population in the 14th century, almost certainly spread along Mongol trade routes. The same networks that facilitated commerce and culture also accelerated epidemics. The interconnected world Genghis Khan created came with consequences no one anticipated. The paradox of the Khan attempting to reconcile the different facets of Genghis Khan's character and legacy reveals profound contradictions. He ordered the massacre of entire populations. The destruction of the Khwarezmian cities alone may have killed 1 million people. Yet he established laws protecting religious freedom and property rights. He rose from slavery to become the most powerful man on earth. Yet he never abandoned the meritocratic principles that enabled his rise. He was illiterate, yet he recognized the value of literacy and employed scribes from multiple cultures to administer his empire. Contemporary sources present wildly different portraits. To the Chinese and Persian chroniclers whose civilizations he devastated, he was the embodiment of barbaric destruction. To the Mongols and their subjects who prospered under imperial rule, he was a lawgiver and unifier who brought order from chaos. Modern assessments remain divided. Was he a genocidal tyrant or a visionary state builder? The uncomfortable truth is that he was both, and that these aspects were inseparable from his success. The brutality wasn't incidental to his achievement. It was instrumental. The terror he cultivated made his army's victories easier. The destruction of old power structures created space for new, more efficient administrative systems. The forced movement of populations and specialists facilitated technology transfer. His vision of unity required breaking the tribal identities that had previously defined steppe politics. Genghis Khan understood something profound about power: that it flows from systems, not just individuals. His legal codes, military structures, and administrative frameworks outlasted him by centuries. His descendants ruled much of Eurasia for over 100 years after his death, and the political structures he established influenced governance from Russia to China to Persia, long after the empire fragmented. The revelation that changes everything here's where we must confront an uncomfortable truth that fundamentally alters how we understand not just Genghis Khan, but the nature of historical progress itself. Every system we celebrate as foundations of modernity, globalized trade, meritocracy, religious tolerance, rule of law, rapid communication networks, cultural exchange was built on rivers of blood. The Renaissance, fueled by Eastern knowledge transmitted through Mongol networks. The Age of Exploration, enabled by cartographic and navigational advances that spread along Silk Road routes. The Scientific Revolution, built on mathematical and astronomical knowledge that flowed between Islamic and European scholars during the Pax Mongolica. Even modern concepts of international law and diplomatic immunity have roots in Mongol administrative practices. We want to believe that human progress follows a peaceful trajectory, that civilization advances through enlightened cooperation and mutual understanding. Genghis Khan's legacy demolishes this comforting myth. The interconnected world we inhabit, the world that allows me to write this and you to read it, has its deepest foundations in one man's ruthlessly efficient vision, implemented through systematic violence on an almost incomprehensible scale. But here's the truly disturbing implication. It's not clear it could have happened any other way. The fragmented medieval world, with its local loyalties and mutual suspicions, was fundamentally resistant to the kind of exchange that drives innovation. Breaking down those barriers required force that transcended local power structures. The peaceful alternative, gradual cultural exchange and diplomatic cooperation, had failed for millennia. This doesn't justify the atrocities. Understanding is not endorsement, but it forces us to reckon with an unsettling question. How much of what we consider human progress has been purchased with methods we would today rightly condemn as crimes against humanity? And perhaps more relevantly, in our own time, as we face global challenges requiring unprecedented cooperation, climate change, pandemics, resource scarcity, are we willing to confront the possibility that transformative change has never come gently? That every major restructuring of human civilization has required overturning existing power structures, and that such overturning has never been bloodless? Genghis Khan doesn't offer us lessons in how to be good. He offers us something more disturbing. A mirror reflecting the uncomfortable truth that everything we value about our interconnected, globalized, relatively meritocratic modern world was forged in exactly the kind of crucible we now find morally reprehensible. We are living inside his vision, built atop the bones of those who resisted it, benefiting from systems created through methods we would never tolerate today. The architect of modernity was a mass murderer. And that paradox, that uncomfortable, inescapable paradox, is the real legacy we must grapple with. Perhaps the most important lesson isn't about Genghis Khan at all. It's about us and our tendency to sanitize history, to extract the benefits of brutal transformations while pretending they could have happened peacefully. We celebrate globalization while ignoring its violent foundations. We praise meritocracy while forgetting it was implemented through the destruction of traditional aristocracies. We enjoy the fruits of forced cultural exchange while deploring the force that made it possible. The man born Temujin, who died as Genghis Khan in 1227, understood something we prefer to forget. That building something new requires destroying something old, and that destruction is never clean, never comfortable, never morally simple. We are his heirs, whether we acknowledge it or not. The question is whether we'll face that inheritance honestly.